Hi everyone. So in this video, I want to look at this worksheet. I've downloaded it just like you will. I want to look at it and talk a little bit about some of the terms in the worksheet so that you have a clear idea of filling it out. So the first thing to understand is that if you look at the directions, which you always should, you'll see that you're supposed to use the reading assigned to you by your instructor to use in units 2 and 3. I mention in the assignment itself and also in the announcement that means you're going to use the article that you chose between the three. So whether it's the cancel culture article or the article about the difference between mental health and mental illness, or the article about women in the workplace, whichever one of those three you chose, that's going to be the one you talk about here. So you're going to use the article that you chose. Your reading number 2 is what you're going to evaluate in this worksheet. So you don't have to worry about doing both at the same time. We will talk about both in the next step, in the next worksheet, but for this worksheet, you're going to use reading number 2. So I wanted to make that clear. This is just for reading number 2 that you chose from that options folder. So you'll put the title here, one of those 3 articles. You'll put the author or authors here. And then there's a section about claim. So one of the things that I want to talk about in this video is just clarifying some terminology so you have a really good idea going into the paper what I'm looking for. So what is one claim presented in this article? Okay. So one of the things that I want to talk about is what is a claim? And I actually just have it pulled up here. I did a quick, and this is something y'all can do too. I did a quick Google search as I typically do. So I can just find my quick Google search. Anytime that I want to put things in words and I want to make sure my wording is precise, I actually tend to do a quick Google search like this. So to get a really good idea. So for a claim, you can see that a claim in the sense that we're looking for the noun version. It's an assertion of the truth of something. So we're really talking about a claim as an assertion, an opinion that the author's putting forward, some kind of idea that they're putting forward as their opinion. So that's what you're looking for in this worksheet. You're looking for one claim that's presented in the article. Another word that it's going to be helpful to understand is tone. What is tone? And again, whenever I think that I understand an idea, but I want to make sure that the wording I have is right and the idea I have is clear in my mind, I like to Google quick definition. So the definition of tone, and you'll have to sift through some that are not quite right. Here, this is the best one. The general character or attitude of a place, piece of writing, situation. So the general character attitude of a piece of writing. One of the things that I think might be helpful to y'all, and I've linked this in the actual announcement, is this article, which includes lists of different types of tone words. So you can see words with a funny tone, words with a serious tone, words with a sad tone, and it gives them meaning. But you can, if you're having trouble coming up with the tone that you think best describes, or even where to start, finding the word that best describes your article, feel free to look through lists like this and see if any of these words you think do a good job matching the tone of your own article. And then another thing to just keep in mind as you're going through, if you want examples of tone, there are some here. These are all literary examples, and we're dealing with more academic stuff. Academic counts as a tone. That counts as a tone word that you can certainly use. But these are some examples to give you an idea of what exactly tone means. So for that question, tone, that it's important to understand that it's kind of the feeling that comes across through the writing. Who is the target audience for this argument? Okay. So when we talk about audience, we're talking about the people that this is meant to speak to. So a lot of times students feel tempted to say everyone, the general public, but writing isn't really like that. If everything was written for everybody to appeal to every single person, we'd all read everything. And we don't. That's not how it works. If every single piece of writing was geared towards every person, then we would all have the exact same magazine subscription. Everything would be written for us. That's not exactly how it works. So when you're talking about who is the target audience for an argument, one of my best pieces of advice, oh, and this is actually, let me pull it up in the Word document so I can type in it. One of my best pieces of advice is to force yourself to start with the phrase people who, because that's going to make you think about who might actually be consuming this and who it might be written for. Don't be fooled by the topic. If the topic is something like, an example might be the article about men in the workforce, women in the women in the workforce, and in order for women to participate more fully in the workforce, I believe the article says men have to step up or something like that is the title. Think about who is actually being given this information. Who does this information need to go to? Who is the target audience here? Is the audience going to be women, or do women already know this? Think about who is actually trying to be persuaded or informed in your articles. And one thing you can do right here is people who, because that forces you not to say like everybody, the general public. A lot of times people will read something, this is a really good example. They'll read something like a headline, and they'll say, oh, it's for the general public. But it will be a headline that is specifically geared towards people living in America. The general, if you say everyone, the general public, that's not specific enough. People in other countries, people in France, aren't necessarily going to want to read an article about public policy in the United States. They're not the target audience. So think about who is actually being appealed to, and narrowing that down when you come up with an idea of the target audience. Another term you're going to want to be clear about is evidence. So one of the questions is, what type of evidence is used? And it asks you to list all of the different types that apply. So you're going to want to use this article that's actually linked through the course. It's one of the articles that we have in our class. Let me just pull it up. It's in the content section, and I've also linked it in the announcement. But if you click on evidence and how to evaluate it, it's going to tell you a little bit about the types of evidence, like statistics, personal experience, anecdotes, testimonials, facts, scientific evidence, hypotheticals, and it's going to give you examples of each. So that's what it's specifically asking for there. It actually wants you to identify which of these types. And if you're not clear what these types are, here are examples and definitions. So be sure to read this article as part of gearing up towards finishing this worksheet. And then the last thing that you're going to want to make sure you understand is the idea of, and you can see right here, this is actually an important note I want to point out actually before I go forward. You're just going to come up with 2 reasons that the article uses to support the claim. So this is going to be an opinion, and then there's going to be some reason that the author thinks that this claim is true. And you are going to be asked to find 2 of those reasons and to look at the evidence that's used to back these up. And you'll note right here it says there may be more reasons in the article. So if you pick, for instance, the main claim of the article, there's probably going to be lots of reasons. But you really only need to pull out and analyze 2 here. So that's just a little side note. Then the last thing that you want to make sure that you understand is the idea of counter-argument. Counter-argument and to some degree refutation. So a counter-argument, one way to think about it is what the other side thinks. You're going to be looking at articles that have a certain opinion. So let's say you're looking at the article of cancel culture. If you say that the point of the article, the claim of the article is that cancel culture shouldn't be that big of a deal, or people shouldn't pay attention to cancel culture. A counter argument to that would be somebody saying, no, we really need to pay attention to counterculture because it's really harmful. If the article says that counterculture isn't that bad, the counter argument is going to say counterculture is harmful, or counterculture is actually taking over the internet, or is changing us, our ideology, whatever. There are different ways to approach counter arguments. There are different counter arguments you might encounter, but a counter argument is essentially what the opposition would say. So whatever claim is listed up here, whatever claim is being made that you're identifying here, what is the counter argument? What is a counter argument? And what counter argument is presented for this particular claim? So within the articles themselves, what counter argument is being offered? One of the reasons that writers do this is so that they can refute what's being put forward. It's a way of making your article more balanced. So typically in a strong argument paper, there's going to be some acknowledgement of the counter argument. So the counter argument is going to be something where the author says, people who disagree, some might say, however, others feel. You're going to get language like that. The opposition might say, my opponents might say, people who disagree, people who aren't sure, some people say, some people disagree. These phrases, look for those, and those will typically come before the counter argument. Typically in an article, when an author brings up the counter argument, they don't just leave that, they then refute it. So instead of saying, here's what other people think and ending on that note, because that's a bad rhetorical choice, if you do that, your reader might just say, yeah, I agree with those people, and be left wondering. A good author will then explain why that counter argument isn't strong enough to override their own opinion, their own claim. If you want to know a little bit more about counter-argument and refutation, there's also a source in Unit 3. Let me just find it. It's in here. Yeah, it's also in the learning materials for Unit 3, and it is called Counter-Argument. So this article is also linked in the announcement, so go ahead and read through here. Counter-argument is an opposing belief that refutes the claim. And you can see a little bit of an explanation of it. So those are the things you need to understand in order to really complete the worksheet, the terms. And I will be linking the articles I showed you in the announcement, so you can go back and look through those as tools to help you if you get stuck in the moment. And you can also, if you come across a term that you're like, I'm not sure what that means, Google it. Lots of other people have done assignments like this before, and lots of colleges expect assignments like this before, so there's tons of resources online.